And welcome to the Copyright 2.0 show, episode number 374. My name is Jonathan Bailey. I am from the website Plagiarism Today, which can be found at plagiarismtoday.com. And joining me, as usual, attorney Evan Sherris, who, as I always remind you guys at the beginning of these shows, is here to drop all kinds of knowledge bombs upon you, but is not dispensing legal advice. For that, pay the man. That simple. Evan, how you doing?
I'm doing well, John. How are you?
Doing all right. This is a first for me. This is the first Copyright 2.0 show I've ever recorded with 3 monitors.
Wow. You had told me that before we started the show, because now I've got all these emotional responses I have to process to this incredible news.
I know, it's huge, isn't it? And it's weird because, unfortunately, I'm not actually using the third monitor for anything other than lighting right now. I actually found a website called blankwhitepage.com. I kid you not, this site exists. There's nothing but a blank white page in full screen so that I have good, clear white LED light coming from that side. This way I don't have to turn on my light on this side and be blind by the time the show's over.
Well, I'm actually jealous because my lighting always sucks at my little home office over here, and I always record the show with my whole room in the background. And
yes.
I wish I had a nice studio to do it, but you know, you'll have to give me a bit of a pay raise for that to happen.
Yeah, I'll have to get one first for that to happen.
Right.
No, but I mean, you know, we've torn down my studio. My studio's not back there anymore. We're actually setting up in the garage when we do video recording and now here. So only the podcast is recorded in this office. The only thing that's recorded. Yeah, how have you been? How have you been, man? Making music?
I've been well. I am, you know, every once in a while making music. I'm always making something. Just working, playing, waiting with bated breath for the next episode of the Copyright 2.0.
Well, aren't we all? I mean, you know, I just got to say you're so busy being a lawyer and Canadian, which I know being Canadian takes up a significant amount of your time.
Very difficult.
It's got to be very trying, but you power through it, and you, like I said, you operate you operate as a lawyer, and once an hour you grace us with your time here on the Copyright 2.0 show, and so glad to have you. The words of wisdom that you bring forth, genuinely some great stuff, and we got some great stories this week. I'm actually very excited about this show. Unfortunately, anyone wanting to hear about the YouTube announcement today about them helping defend certain people over what they see as false DMCA notices, we can't cover that. We did not have time to get that in the show notes and process it.
Well, why don't you tell our listeners what we are going to be talking about today? John, I lost you.
Oh, Christ.
John, I got you.
Okay.
Are you back?
I'm back. So are you. Okay. I don't know what happened there. It was most bizarre. I was just saying that if you wanted to hear the YouTube story, not this time. That'll be next week on the
Right, I got that. Don't worry.
Okay. All right, and I just asked if you want me to go down the list.
Yeah, go down the list.
All right. Well, first off, we have an update in the TV Eyes case. I think is pretty significant and very interesting / bizarre. We have an update, sort of I guess you might say this is another nail in the coffin in the Prenda Law story. I'm sure as an attorney, you're going to have something to say about this. We also have an update on the MovieTube lawsuit and the MPA's new demands. Big controversy over the diary of Anne Frank this week. This is a very interesting
cool story.
This is a very cool story. I'm looking forward to talking about it too. Film On suffers a major defeat in your city, DC. The monkey selfie battle, which Evan has staked a whole great deal on, is not being taken very seriously by the defense. To which Evan, I believe, responds, nor should it. But anyways, we also have
we'll get to that. I've got some comments over there. Slightly over here.
I am. The anticipation is palpable on this end of the line. Blizzard, makers of World of Warcraft and other games, have sued a bot maker, but have they sued the right one? And finally, the U.S. trade body will not be able to block your internet, it turns out. Not a huge surprise, but still a story worth covering. So, TV Eyes.
Yeah, before we jump into this, I do there was something I did want to say. I got a really nice email from a gentleman who asked to use some quotes from our show in a presentation to artists. I haven't had the chance to email him back yet, but if you're listening, you totally can. I'll send you exactly what I'd like you to say. But I really appreciate you reaching out and saying that.
Yeah, that's
listening. I don't know if you would want me to say his name on the show.
No, let's leave the name out of it for now. I don't think we got permission, so.
But thanks for reaching out, and of course you can use that quote that you asked to use for whatever purposes you need, and let's jump into it. So TVIs, this is step 3 or 4.
Yeah, this case is bizarre in a lot of fronts.
So
yeah, well,
TVIs is this clipping service, right?
Yeah.
Which is used. Go ahead, John. You want to?
Yeah, basically what they do is they record all of a bunch of networks' TV programming, and then the list here: MSNBC, ABC, CBS, Reuters, Bloomberg. So those are the customers. But basically, a bunch of TV networks. They record a bunch of people, and they allow others to search it. They make it indexable, searchable, and they can take those clips and then do things with it. It's like one of the old traditional PR clipping services, but usually those historically have been licensed.
Correct.
TVIs is not. They are hinging their life on the fact that they consider what they're doing to be a fair use.
Right, and so there's been a few up and downs on both sides of this case. Initially, that indexing service was determined to be fair use, which is a win for TVIs. But then later, some of their other services were deemed to be infringing and non-fair use. And so today, we had a big hammer come down, or I don't know if this was today, a few days ago, but we're talking about it today. A permanent injunction was issued against the service, which, like we said before, was used by many media and government organizations to kind of figure out where and how to find certain news clips done by Fox News and Fox Business News. I don't know if that's exactly what they're called, but so a lot of those, the service was used to, like you said, to share those clips amongst other companies and amongst government employees. A lot of these customers basically were paying $500 a month to watch live streams and view past television programs, and were able to download limited HD clips and share them. So Fox News sued, contending that the service was damaging to its investments, of course, in copyright. Like I said, they lost the first round when a judge ruled that the indexing and excerpting part of the service was fair use. However, for the other parts, the judge has ruled that it was copyright infringement, and now this injunction has been issued. And most people might think of an injunction as must stop doing all of this, or you're not forced to stop doing all. But this injunction was actually a little sculpted. It had very specific instructions, basically almost curtailing the use to what it thought it would be fair use. You know, users can no longer download video clips of content. They can't view content searching by date and time and channel. They can't share those clips on social media. Basically, they're forcing TVIs to install software that prevents embedding on various social media sites. And also, users cannot email these clips to, when they do find them, to more than 5 recipients, and are forced to register their work emails.
Yeah, it's very specific when it gets to email. It's like 5 recipients and only those listed with TVIs.
Right, and they have to register work emails, not Gmails. They know exactly which company is using them. So I imagine they're trying to restrict the practice to what it would consider to be fair use.
Yeah.
So we lost John. Yeah, hopefully he's coming back anytime. So the issue of damages is ongoing. For those of you who don't know, sometimes the judge can come to a conclusion when it comes to such a judgment as to somebody is liable, and then they go to the issues of trying damages afterwards. Sorry, John, I know we lost you, and now you're back. I was just telling them about the issue of trying damages.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm back. I don't know what the heck's going on. It seems like I'm only having trouble with Google Hangouts today. Everything else has no trouble connecting. I was streaming YouTube like right before we got on here.
Yeah, that's the price of doing business. So.
It is. Anyway, sorry. Please, you were doing such a great job. But yeah, it's a I found it very interesting though how specific this ruling was, trying to get it down to what the judge considered to be a fair use. like I said, the limitation of 5 people may be emailed and they have to have accounts.
Well, this is almost a win for TVIs, because when you look at the judgment and you look at the opinion, the first thing that the court says is that, we find TVIs liable for ongoing and willful copyright infringement, which opens them up to increased
massive damages,
massive damages. So to basically allow their service to go forward in some capacity is kind of a win for them.
Yeah, and that's really what's interesting, is that this is a very surgical strike, even though it is a very significant strike. It's...
Right. I would argue that it's, rather than it being a surgical strike, what's remained,
it's an amputation.
It's an amputation, really. It's what remains is surgical. Only being able to share it with 5 people at a time. I don't know if that really performs the service that these customers really want. Right, was to be able to share pertinent information with their entire department, or with a much larger user base than that. But in the context of a government opinion starting with having found you liable for ongoing and willful copyright infringement, that's never a good sign for you.
No.
So,
those are words you do not want to read.
No.
But yeah, so it's a fascinating case, though, and it really, I think, might provide some interesting guidance on fair use in this area to those who come later. Because I don't know how, like I said, I don't know how well TVIs is going to manage this. There will be damages. Damages phase, as you said, is ongoing, and there will be damages. It's like there will be blood, there will be damages. It's one of those things.
Yeah, there will be damages, so who knows if the company will even stay afloat after their...
Yeah, exactly. And if what remains after this, surgical inclusion will be adequate for them to continue. However, the next company may be able to take this as some guidance and move forward and find a business model around that.
Right. I believe there's only 19 videos at stake at this particular lawsuit. So $150,000 a video.
The theoretical max, so that almost never happened.
So who knows if they can survive that theoretical max, or if there's...
Well, and that's just it. Now's the point where Fox News would probably start thinking about maybe adding some videos.
Right. Who knows what their next step is, but that's where we are with the story, and that brings us to the next one, which is, I don't know if it's my favorite or least favorite to talk about, because I love to basically give negative publicity to the, I don't even know which word I want to use, because I want to use something inappropriate, but these lawyers who gave us all a bad name.
Yeah.
These unethical lawyers who are surely about to have their licenses removed and be disbarred for their practice. We've talked about these guys before.
Yeah.
The new news in the
Prindle Law saga.
Prindle Law porn suit guys is that the Minnesota lawyers, the Minnesota Professional Responsibility Group or bar, has filed a 43-page petition seeking to disbar the lawyers involved in what we have previously talked about are porn nuisance lawsuits. Do you want to bring the listeners up to speed on what exactly those were?
Yeah, long story short, what Prindle Law's story was commonly referred to as copyright trolling, where these guys filed lawsuits against John Doe defendants they did not know, and the idea was they filed the lawsuits knowing nothing but their IP addresses and that they had shared these videos, these movies. Right. And the idea was force the ISPs to turn over, to convert those IP addresses into names and human addresses. And from there, send them threatening letters in hopes that they will settle, and if not, consider other legal action as they could, but the case began to fall apart. Inevitably, some people began to fight back, and it was uncovered.
Right. John, importantly, these letters, these demand letters that were sent out to these people, specifically mentioned that you watched this strange type of porn on this date, and they were asking, this was a key point, they were asking for just enough money that would made it not worth it to fight back.
Yeah.
So it was clearly designed
low four figures, basically.
Money off of either married men who watched, gay porn, or they really the practice was so unethical.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, it's just enough. Like, to go in and get a lawyer to defend you would probably cost, in this type of case, $10,000 or so dollars, we'll say.
So these guys have already been hit with hundreds of thousands of dollars in sanctions for what they've done. So basically, this is the Minnesota bar's next step, which is saying that we don't want you practicing law.
Yeah, and the other thing about it that they were getting hit for was not only were they engaging in unethical lawsuits, but their supposed plaintiffs were shell companies that they controlled.
Right.
Which is a big no-no.
So yeah, that was the whole second aspect of their unethical practice. They're in bankruptcy now, and they're trying to hide their assets. There's been a number of motions filed because the shields of bankruptcy law are not available to certain debtors who are trying to hide their assets from their creditors, or who are in bankruptcy, or they owe money because of unethical practices like this. And they're using basically the bankruptcy law as a way to quickly move assets to another partner, or to the wife in this case. So that's another thing that's going on, is that various creditors are filing to remove the bankruptcy protection from these individuals.
Yeah.
Bad faith conduct in getting the assets. Well, then you shouldn't be entitled to the protection of bankruptcy laws, basically what they're arguing.
And they're arguing for the liquidation of all assets now, just to pay the creditors immediately. No protection of the assets, just liquidate them now. Nuke them from orbit, basically.
Exactly. We'll be keeping an eye on this. I'm certain that this gentleman will be disbarred, and that this sort of practice will be hopefully relegated to the past.
Hopefully.
Yep.
But yeah, and for those who aren't fully aware, bankruptcy is basically where you say, my debts far exceed my ability to ever repay them. I declare bankruptcy. The court protects me from those creditors coming after me, and in exchange discharges the debts after getting what can be reasonably repaid.
Right, exactly. Creditors take a certain percentage of what they're owed. The assets are
wiped, are wiped, and you get it's a fresh start is the idea. You kind of start from nothing.
Right.
And it's potentially very lucrative if you have significantly less than nothing to get up to nothing. But that's not what's going on here.
Yep. That brings us to the MovieTube lawsuit.
Yeah, this is interesting. We covered MovieTube previously. They were a fairly standard streaming site. But they got hit with an MPA lawsuit, which one would expect. These things happen. And MPA really requested a very broad injunction targeting pretty much everyone that had ever had contact with this site, ever, it seemed like. And also requesting that the site basically be blocked in certain aspects.
Right. They were asking the court to enforce various demands they had on third parties. That included ISPs,
advertisers,
to the lawsuits, basically, and advertisers. And so various parties in Google, YouTube, etc., basically filed Amici.
Amici. I think an Amici lawsuit would look very, very different from a philosophical standpoint.
Amici lawsuit. So basically, these are lawsuits filed by non-parties who feel like they have some sort. It's going to impact them in some way. This will impact us in the future. Basically, they said that, hey, you're trying to bind non-party services. Like, we have to be in active participation with defendants before being subject to any injunctions. So once that was filed, the MPAA actually withdrew that demand.
And it also helped that MovieTube shut down too, and kind of made the whole issue moot. But yes, the MPA did withdraw it.
Well, now they're saying that, well, we've got this default judgment. They haven't shown up. So basically what we want now is that we're seeking an injunction, again, to prevent the sites which have shut down from reappearing at any time, saying that the only way to really conclude this matter is these domain names need to be transferred to us. And in order to do that, we need an injunction against the registrars, basically. The hosts have to be forced to do this, and this is not new. Prior to what everyone else is arguing is that there's this court and other courts have done this in the past. This is nothing new. In connection, for example, with counterfeit goods, this has been done by this court in the past. And there was a trademark element to this lawsuit as well. So other courts and other jurisdictions have done it before, which is not necessarily binding authority. It's something called persuasive authority. when a party to a lawsuit cites other jurisdictions. That is what's known as persuasive authority to a court. If, for example, an appeals court in the jurisdiction of this case has a matter that's directly on point, the case is pretty much bound to follow that rule of law. However, if the case cited by a party is a different court in a different jurisdiction that is not the Supreme Court, which of course would be binding, it's known as what's called persuasive authority. So not necessarily bound.
Probably listen, but don't really have to.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's really interesting in these types of cases because the MPA started out with this very broad injunction, as we discussed, and now they've gone and they've gotten this default judgment because you said MovieTube just kind of never showed up. They were apparently given what the court considered adequate service, meaning adequate notice that they should probably respond somehow, and have chosen not to. And so now basically what's going to happen is the case is going to move forward, but only the MPAA gets to speak. Unless MovieTube decides to show up. They basically said they've chosen not to show up. We have to move forward. These are our judgments. These are our actions.
They would have to find a way to get the default judgment vacated, which is difficult.
It's highly improbable.
Yes, and so they're going to
have to show there was some reason that they didn't show up.
So
yeah, service was improper somehow.
There's a few other ways, but
those are the main ones typically hear about. That I hear.
Right. Yeah. So right now, the default judgment basically says that everything that you alleged is
true. Yeah.
Basically, we're going to move forward with it. So now they've asked for a remedy, which is essentially injunction and damages.
Yeah, and it seems like the MPA's being pretty reasonable here, to be frank.
Right, and they're asking for half of what they're entitled to because this is probably one of those situations where they're never going to get their hands on anything.
Yeah.
But at the very minimum, what they want is these domain names to be transferred over to them, and from the case history that they've cited, it seems like they're going to get it.
Yeah, almost certainly. So, Anne Frank's diary.
Anne Frank's diary.
This is interesting. I actually wrote a pretty lengthy article on plagiarism today about this, but I want your thoughts on it. I want to hear someone else besides my own voice on it.
This one leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So, Anne Frank, the author of her diaries, as she was hiding from the Nazis in the Second World War, was eventually killed in a German concentration camp, and is one of the biggest stories, most well-known stories from the Second World War.
And she's gone on to become kind of the human face of the Holocaust in many ways.
Right. Her death was in 1945.
Yeah, the last year of World War II.
The last year of World War II, which is 70 years ago.
And, a lot of this stuff is coming up because, like I said, that's 70 years ago. We're also hearing about this, I don't know if ironically is the right word, about Hitler and his works, like Mein Kampf, for the same reason.
Right. So in Europe, copyright lasts life of the author plus 70 years for things written at that time. So that means that her works are about to fall out of copyright. And whenever there is a significant financial interest, of course, someone is going to try and protect that interest. And the foundation, which owns the copyright of her work, and of course does great work.
Oh yeah, there's no criticism of Anne Frank France, which is the organization involved here. They take that funds and the whole charity is about sort of giving donations and doing things in the spirit of Anne Frank, basically.
Right. So what they've done now is began this public campaign, or they issued an announcement that they've changed who they believe is the author of her work, because her diaries were initially published by her father, who edited and selected which one of the diary entries would be included in the initial publication, and added a prologue, and he died in 1980. So life of the author plus 70 years, do the math, they have 35 more years. But this is a brand new stance. They've never alleged this before. So allegedly what's happened that 6 years ago, the foundation asked various legal experts in various countries for advice on its copyright. And according to Yves Kugelman, a member of the foundation's board, various legal experts concluded that Otto, her father, had created a new work because of his role of editing, merging, and trimming entries from her diary and notebooks and reshaping them into a kind of collage meriting its own copyright. Now, here's where they lose me in a few ways. Now, I'm on board, of course, with the sister law of the U.S. law, which is the selection arrangement. The selection arrangement, and there's one more word here for our and listing. I don't know if it's listing, but anyways, if you take various other either non-copyrightable work or work that's copyrighted in itself, and you arrange it and you select it in a certain way, you have your own copyright over it. But that copyright would only extend to the way you've arranged it. So even if this claim stands up, their copyright would be fairly thin, no? It would only, so anyone would have the right to use various passages in itself, and they would only be restricted in reprinting the whole diary, which I guess is some sort of financial resource. But at the same time, you know, I don't know if it's going to work.
My beef with this is they're coming out with this in late November of the year of the copyright's expiration. I don't need Scooby and the gang to figure out, you know, what's going on here. It's highly suspicious, the timing of it, because it makes it impossible to get an adequate challenge of it together before, you know, it would lapse in the public. That means on January 1st of next year, this diary is going to be in a weird gray area where many are going to believe it's public domain, but, you know, this charity is continuing to believe that it is. And what happens? You know, we enter this weird twilight zone of copyright. And my problem is this. When we talk about co-authorship, you and I are co-authoring this podcast right now.
We are
co-authoring. We are two creators who came together with the intention of creating a new unified work. Now, obviously, Anne Frank did not do that with her father in the diary. However, but the argument is, obviously, Otto, when Anne Frank and everyone else in the family unfortunately died in the Holocaust, became the copyright holder.
All right. I don't think that there's an argument here that they're joint authors. The argument would have to be that this is a new selection and arrangement of a previously copyrighted work that is entitled to its own copyright, which would last the life of the author plus 70 years, which goes to 2050. I don't think that there's any legitimate argument that they're co-authors.
I would agree with that, but it seems like that's one of the arguments that they're making, is that he contributed enough to the diaries to make it a co-authorship.
Yeah, you know, maybe there's a different standard.
I think there may be a different standard in the EU on this.
In the EU on this, but it certainly wouldn't up here.
Yeah, and that's an interesting footnote. Here, it doesn't matter, because the diary is not lapsing into the public domain here until 1947, 95 years after publication.
2047.
2047, 95 years after its publication. English version first published in 1952.
Well, you know, the decision sets the foundation basically on a collision course with Anne Frank Museum in Amsterdam, which I had the chance to visit, which was unbelievable. You know, and they've been at odds for a long time over various legal questions, and so it's a problem for sure. And I personally don't think it'll work, but then again, someone has to actually challenge it for the claim not to work. So who knows if there's and litigate between these two nonprofits. So,
and that's just it. We saw this with "Happy Birthday to You" as a good example, where Warner Chappell Music went for decades, let's be honest, collecting royalties because no one found a way to practically challenge it.
Right.
And it's been widely assumed for a long period of time. I was writing about Happy Birthday to You almost certainly being public domain years before a lawsuit, and it goes way back even before that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's exactly the type of situation we could wind up with here. Is yes, I think this legal theory is very thin because editors typically are not granted like a new copyright on a work.
No.
And that's just not how it happens, especially considering that they're in the Otto's foreword. He said that he tried to change as little as possible.
Yeah.
That kind of needles at that theory a little, doesn't it?
Yeah. I don't think it'll hold up. And you know, I'm torn between who I'm with ethically. At the same time, I understand that the money goes towards educating everyone about the Holocaust, but then again, this this museum in Amsterdam does the same thing, and they should not have to continue paying royalty rights, and they should really go on their own. So,
and the thing about it is this. We talked about the Peter Pan copyright. I think briefly we touched on what happened there. I wrote about it on Plagiarism Day, but basically the Peter Pan copyright, the UK just sort of decided, you know what? Peter Pan's copyright never grows up. It never expires. And they basically wrote it into the law. Now, that's not true here in the US and elsewhere. That has no authority here. But in the UK, Peter Pan is forever under copyright because all the royalties go to support a children's hospital in London. And, if that you want to do that, that's fine. I don't necessarily agree with it, but at least that's, honest. At least we're not stuck in a legal, uncertain gray area that's going to cause confusion possibly for decades to come. That's my frustration.
All right, well, I think we've talked this one out. Let's move to the Film On story.
Yeah, Film On. This is a little more cut and dry. No, it's not at all, actually, unfortunately.
Well, it's cut and dry if we don't know what exactly is a compulsory license.
Oh, God.
Which I really don't want to do.
And I don't want to either. But
the brief story here is that Film On, which was like Aereo, is asking for the rights to be considered like a cable company, who here have the right to basically rebroadcast transmissions and pay a statutory license fee, and they basically were denied that right.
Yeah, that's the can of worms we don't really want to open. But what was interesting is no one expected Film On to get anywhere with that argument, basically. Right. Because not only did Aereo get totally blown out of the water by the Supreme Court, but the U.S. Copyright Office also issued its own sort of, not judgment, but its own statement saying it didn't believe Film On qualified. So basically, it seemed like everyone in the world was disagreeing with Film On this. But then the Ninth Circuit in California came on this, we agree with you guys.
Right.
And everyone went, what? Are you kidding? Are cows purple now? What is going on here? And here we have the circuit in D.C., bringing some reason to us again, or at least bringing some more of the expected story and saying, no, the Ninth Circuit is crazy pills. But now guess what we have? The term, circuit split. True, honest to God, circuit split. Ninth Circuit versus the Federal Circuit in D.C. So, yeah, this is going to be fun. Now, do we have potentially another Supreme Court case in our future?
Potentially. That's what circuit splits tend to lead to, although I feel like the Supreme Court views the
matter is closed.
No. I feel like they're the like IP world, and then the tech world are those annoying nephews that are always fighting.
Yeah,
they must be so sick and tired of these cases.
Well, and it's like I said earlier when the gay marriage ruling came down. And of course the Supreme Court was having to deal with all the secondary challenges to it. I said the Supreme Court needs, whenever it's approving or disapproving those granting cert, it needs yes, no, and did I stutter
right.
for those cases. This might be a did I stutter moment for them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the moral of the story here is that,
DC,
you have rights. These courts, these rights, these are intellectual property rights, and those just don't change because new technology has come out.
No.
You still have a copyright. And when we pass something that's meant for cable companies, it's meant for cable companies, not for people who act like cable companies, not for people who want to dress up like a cable company. It's for cable companies.
It's like you're starting to feel like Film On is the two kids wearing a trench coat trying to get into the movie theater.
Exactly.
It doesn't work that way. That actually never worked. Let's be honest. That never actually worked.
Although do you watch BoJack Horseman, the Netflix series?
No, I do not actually. I've
They have
heard
an ongoing bit about one of the characters is dating this guy, and it's actually just two kids in a trench coat, and it's been ongoing for 2 seasons.
So I guess it does work somewhere. I apologize to BoJack Horseman.
Well, speaking of silly animals,
that
brings us to another update.
All right, monkey selfie case. I almost called you Eddie for some reason. Evan, you said you had something you wanted to say on this because to recap, I guess we should recap.
Go ahead.
Basically, what happened here is a photographer. There's some dispute what happened here, but basically the photographer had his camera taken, or he gave it to a macaw monkey, who in turn snapped some photos because he's playing with it and hitting buttons. And one of the photos turned out pretty awesome, known as the monkey selfie. It's the camera's looking at him or herself. That's an issue we're going to be discussing. Right. And long story short, it became very popular. Now the question is, who owns the copyright to that? PETA sued, saying, well, clearly the monkey owns the copyright to it, and we would like to administer said copyright since the monkey cannot administer the copyright. How anyone can hold a copyright they can't administer. But anyway, Eddie, I did it again. Evan, take it over.
We've said this before, that this is the most preposterous argument we've ever heard. And I believe a few months ago said that if he was entitled to copyright, I would go streaking through the streets of DC, and that was what we referred to earlier.
Well, you also said you would burn your bar license.
And I would burn my bar license, right? I would resign from the bar. So I understand that as a lawyer, when you're arguing for something, you want to cover all your bases, and you want to, if you have the chance to argue, well, this is why I'm right, but if that's not why I'm right, this is why I'm right. I get that.
Well, we oftentimes refer to as the spaghetti method of litigation.
Right.
Throwing everything to the wall and seeing what sticks.
So it's really not necessary here, but for some reason, the defense lawyers say that not only is a monkey not entitled to copyright, which is so ridiculous, which is what the Copyright Office has said, but not only that, but you're suing on behalf of the wrong monkey or something like that.
Basically, what they're saying is that the monkey they are, this is like the weirdest conversation to have on the Copyright 2.0 show, but yeah, this is what we've been forced into because of PETA.
I think we should go back to the 1.0 show because this is
the 0.01 show, the alpha edition.
Right.
Naruto, basically speaking, is a male. The monkey they have identified as a male. However, they believe primatologists looking at the photograph say the monkey in the photograph is a female.
There's just no words.
Where do you go with that? Where do we go? Where do we take
this is not, it will not be litigated. It is a moot issue. You cannot sue on behalf of a monkey for copyright. They're not going to get to I don't know which one's first. Maybe standing is important, at least. Well, it's just so ridiculous.
It really is, and I recognize that there is absolutely no danger to your bar license or your modesty.
I do stick to my guns, though. I will burn my bar license if this monkey wins.
Because at that point, the legal system, you probably don't want anything to do with it anyway. There's
the Professor Farnsworth meme. I don't want to live on this planet anymore. That is, I do not want to be in this industry anymore.
You will take your fashionable hoodie and your rugged good looks, and you will.
Stop it.
You will go trudging down the Appalachian Trail or something for the rest of your life because there's nothing for you in the legal world if this goes any differently. But my God, the whole monkey holding a copyright thing is just so hilarious to me on its face.
Yeah, well, this brings us to what we discussed last week, which was our own video game podcast, right?
Yes, we do need one. We need to have a video game podcast, clearly, because we keep coming back to it. And other things that amuse me. But yeah, Blizzard Entertainment.
Love Blizzard Entertainment.
Oh, dude. By the way, did you get the email I sent you? I sent you the Spotify playlist of the sea shanties from Assassin's Creed Black Flag.
I did get that. I've got a lot of work to do tomorrow. I'm gonna put that on.
It's a great list. It's a great list. But yes, Blizzard Entertainment did not make Assassin's Creed Black Flag or any of the Assassin's Creed games, but they did make some pretty excellent ones, like Warcraft, the Diablo series, World of Warcraft, and apparently Heroes of the Storm, which I am not familiar with, and I feel remiss.
So they're basically suing various companies for creating what is essentially cheating bots for the games. Users, instead of actually playing the games and doing the grind it takes to build their characters, basically download these third-party bots. It runs automatically, so all the hard parts are done for them, and they're less, or maybe not the hard, but the more grindy parts, and they're left with all the best gear, I guess.
This blows my mind in a way, though, on a personal level. You pay money for a video game, and then you pay something else to play it for you.
It's one of those things that you don't understand unless you, I think, you have experience grinding out video games. A lot of video games will get their value, or what they think is their value, by making you earn your way to play.
Look, have you ever played Just Cause 2?
I haven't.
You have not. Okay, then I don't know how much this means to you. I currently have 99.97% completion in that game, and it drives me insane that I don't have a perfect 100. But to have that percentage, it took over 100 hours, dude.
Wow.
I've got some grind skill. I got some grind skill in my background here, but yeah, I do know what you mean, though. Yeah.
Well, so they've sued these companies in copyright, and that might lead you to say,
Copyright? How does that work?
Well, let me bring you to a case from a few years ago called MDY Industries LLC versus Blizzard Entertainment. So in ruling on Blizzard's contributory copyright infringement claims, which means that they were suing these people for contributing to somebody else's copyright infringement, it is secondary infringement, which means there had to be a direct infringer.
Yes.
The district court considered whether the purchasers of World of Warcraft, which was the game that their users were using these cheat bots to play, were actually the legal owners of the client software. So basically the court determined that they're not. They were licensees of the software. The users basically had to agree to the EULA, which is their, I don't know.
End user license agreement.
End user license agreement.
You're welcome.
So basically, according to the Copyright Act, owners of the computer programs were allowed to create copies or adaptations of the computer program in using it, and they weren't actually owners of it. So the court agreed with Blizzard's argument that these purchasers were not the legal owners of the game, but instead licensees. And as licensees, players are required to make use of the software within the scope of those EULAs.
And if I remember correctly, Autodesk did something similar with AutoCAD too. So it's not just Blizzard, for the record.
So in terms of that agreement, Blizzard specifically prohibited the use of these types of third-party softwares. So therefore, these users, when they were using these cheating programs, were in violation of the licenses and those copyright infringers, which then you take the next step. Were they materially contributing to that and profiting off of it, which was the test for contributory infringement, and they were. And so, in other way, basically, there was your contributory copyright infringement.
Yeah.
In addition, as with most other software, the client software also made use of some of Warcraft's code. I think I was reading about this, which is also prohibited, and that's exactly the case that we have now. And I believe it'll go the same way.
Yeah, almost certainly. And now the one interesting question that's in the update here on this article on Torrent Freak is that apparently someone else is claiming ownership of the bots other than the people that were sued.
I don't know why you like that, but
I don't know either. That seems awfully stupid.
Right, that just becomes an issue of having the right defendant, and that's just
eventually you don't get defendants, and if you, especially early on, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
provided full service, and before you've gotten like too far in the case, it's actually easy to. Oh yeah, this guy too. Yeah, let's go. You know, it's not that complicated to add defendants to an ongoing litigation.
This is pretty
to an early on in a case, but yeah,
it's pretty normal activity. I mean. A lot of the times in cases where the person who you're suing is doing something that is illegal, and they know that it is illegal, you're probably going to sue one or two people before you find out who the entity is that actually has the money or actually produced it, et cetera, et cetera.
So, yeah, it's fairly ho-hum stuff. I agree, but yeah, this whole thing of the bot software really just it intrigues me to no end that this exists and is a thing for one. But I also, you see why Blizzard wants it done away with. A lot of these are multiplayer games, and people are using these bots to gain unfair advantages. So
Right, and it's their users are working hard to do it the old-fashioned way and want to be proud of those accomplishments, and here are these other people cheating. So I get it.
could they get one of these bots to help me sail the damn ship in Assassin's Creed Black Flag? That could have been useful a couple of times. Trying all those long voyages early on in the game.
Yep. Well, now I guess we see where they're coming from.
Yeah, there you go. Well, finally today we wrap this up by talking about a patent case, oddly enough.
Right. So, go ahead. You want to bring us?
Yeah, I'll try to bring us up to speed a little bit here. It involves a company called Align Technology, who basically they produce those Invisalign braces that are apparently like 3D printed or like super awesome, and I probably should look into them for myself. But the point remains, they have a competitor called Clear Correct, who they say was infringing their patents, but was doing so in a pretty original way, one must admit. And the idea was that basically Align Technology has patents governing the scanning and the manipulating of these actual the
3D printing.
The 3D printing of the prosthetics. What Clear Connect was doing was they were scanning the mouth, but sending it to Pakistan, where they would do all the calculations and the patent infringing stuff, and then a 3D diagram of it be beamed back to their plant in Texas, where the printing would take place. So all the patent infringing stuff was happening in Pakistan, where apparently they don't have a patent or otherwise cannot enforce the patent for whatever reason.
In comes the U.S. International Trade Commission, which has authority over most international trade disputes, basically things that are crossing the border. They've got this authority to rule on a lot of intellectual property matters. But when things are coming through and across the border, they've got basically this authority to figure out if there's intellectual property theft, trade secret theft, and of course they do a lot of patent cases as well. So the question was, and this was a big groundbreaking case, is that does it have the authority over data? And this was covered quite a bit when it was first filed, whether it would be this, the new Wild West frontier for copyright, for trademark, for all sorts of other. Actually, it does do trademark. I don't think actually it would be new for trademark. It would be new for copyright as to whether, if it has control over data, it could then rule in copyright. And basically, it came out the other day saying no.
Yeah, in a 2-1 decision, so not unanimous, but a 2-1 decision ruled against them. Now, obviously, this can be appealed to the Supreme Court, and since basically the ITC only answers to the Federal Circuit Appeals, there's not like we're going to get another circuit on this.
No, it goes directly to that circuit. It cannot go anywhere else.
Yeah, there's nowhere else it goes.
So they basically decided that because the U.S. law gives the Commission authority over the unfair practices in the importation of articles, that there's a fundamental difference between electronic transmissions and material things, and the importation of articles only applies to material things.
Yeah, so if you're dealing with someone importing your bootleg DVDs via ship or plane, ITC's your man. But the electronic import of those files over BitTorrent networks, not so much.
Right.
What the court basically said. Well, that's all I've got. Any further thoughts? Anything you want to add? Any further wagers you want to stack on the monkey selfie case?
I think I've got quite a bit riding on the line.
You do already, so I don't think you need to tack on any more to it. I agree.
All right, well, thank you everyone for listening.
Yeah, thank you, and we'll just wrap it up by me saying that I'm Jonathan Bailey, site Plagiarism Today, username Plagiarism Today at all the fine places.
And my name is Evan Sherris. You can find me on Twitter at Evan Sherris. Shoot me an email, esherris@gmail.com.
Yes.
I should have my new firm's email address out shortly. I'm doing some trademark prosecution with them. And
ask him.
You're in the furniture business.
Trademark question too, yes.
I'll see you at the next show in Las Vegas in January.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, guys, next week it is Thanksgiving here in the United States. I do not think we are recording that week, so we will see you guys in 2 weeks' time.
Goodbye.
Catch up with you then. Bye.